Hey guys, hey guys, welcome to Think Aside. My name is Andrew, and today I wanted to talk about the Federal Reserve. And I think normally we think of the Federal Reserve as being a federal thing. It's a government thing. It's something that is part of the government and is controlled and blah 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 with the government. Well, it turns out it's actually a private entity. And so this isn't inherently bad. You could argue that it's fine and whatever. But I thought it was very interesting that the Federal Reserve, the very thing that's called Federal Reserve, is not federal, and nor does it have any reserves. There's nothing backing it. There's no gold or anything like that. It's literally a private entity that was created by a group of central bankers in the early 1900s. They met on a private island resort called Jekyll Island in Georgia, and they wrote this Federal Reserve Act that they proposed to Congress and got it passed, which allowed them to control the economy more or less. And it was with the intentions to stabilize the economy short term and long term. And nowadays, if you look it up, you'll see like more of the generals. You'll see that their purpose is to control inflation and to control unemployment. But unfortunately, the problem is, of course, when you hand that much power, because you think if they can create, because they can create the United States dollar. They literally are the thing that creates the United States dollar. So when you hand the power to someone to create the United States dollar, and you think that because every other country's dollar is linked to the United States dollar, that means that they can control every single dollar in the entire world. When you hand that much power to a group of people, what do you think is going to happen? Right? Nothing really necessarily good, I would argue. So I don't know. I just wanted to pose that thought that I thought it was very interesting, and I think we should kind of be aware of the power that is behind pretty much everything in the sense that they control the economy. It is a manipulated economy. It's not a free market. It's not true capitalism. And so that's kind of the biggest points I wanted to cover. I don't want to get too in depth with the conspiracy type of stuff. And I say conspiracy lightly because I don't know that much of it is conspiracy. It seems to be pretty factual, but I also think that kind of convolutes the intention here, which is to simply point out of something that kind of is mind-boggling to me is that the thing that is causing, in a sense, what is causing inflation and controlling the way things are is the Federal Reserve. It is a group of people, just a group of people that are deciding these things. And so without getting too in depth, that is something that I think we should all be aware of and to realize that central banks historically have always been bad. Centralized power in general has always been bad. Absolute power absolutely corrupts. I think I got that saying right. That is, it's just generally how it is. Like you hand someone that much power, and they're bound to use it to their benefit. Like it's just how it works. So I mean, like I was saying, historically speaking, I was saying a long time ago, but historically speaking, centralized power, centralized banks, things like that has always been bad. We fought to get away from exactly that, which created the United States. And early in the 1900s, people understood that centralized power, centralized banks, things like that were bad, that they were causing problems. They saw the manipulation was being caused, that was happening, and they fought really hard to have that go away. They wanted to change the way that things were being handled. And so, of course, the centralized bankers at the time, they saw this being the case, and they had a problem with it. Of course, they didn't want that to happen. And so instead of sitting by and seeing what happened, they took it into their own hands. They created what's called the Federal Reserve Act, and they proposed it to the Congress. They were able to convince people through a couple of different ploys, like, for instance, giving it the name Glass Bill, which is a Democrat, which people at the time kind of thought Democrats were kind of the working class. They supported the working class and they kind of related to the working class and things like that. So people were more trusting of someone at that time with a Democrat on their side. And so beyond that, Another aspect is these central bankers, the very ones that actually wrote this bill, this act, was were simultaneously being interviewed by people saying they didn't like it, that they weren't happy about the regulations and such that was going on, and then had them publicized so that way the general public would see this and be like, oh well, this guy doesn't like it. And this is coming directly from G. Edward Griffin. This is the guy that wrote The Creature of Jekyll Island. He had talked about this, and it made a lot of sense. Is that you know they they would see this, and that was enough for them. They would say like, well, this banker, he doesn't like this, so it must be good for them to not like it. So it worked. Their trick worked, and it was passed, and that's where the Federal Reserve actually started. So anything, I would say, anything that started with such a uh, manipulated mindset to begin with, a manipulation tactics, can't be all that good, right? So that's really all my goal is here, to kind of point out some some things that I think I mean, we were too young, we're born way after the event, so we were born into the federal, or at least I was, the Federal Reserve, to just being in existence and just being a part of our country. So we didn't think anything of it, or I didn't. But I think it's important to be aware of those things and how it started, what it is, the power that it has, and the power that it can continue to have, and to grow. Because that's the thing. Like, they're not going to just relent power, right? They're not just going to give it up. They're not going to just sit by idly and be like, yeah, we have enough power. Just like any other entity that has power, that it's never enough. They want more. I mean, look at our government. It's the same kind of thing. So, I mean, that's where you get into the US digitizing their dollar and things like that, where now you have them having millions and millions and millions of these coins, and then dishing out the rest at fractional, amounts to everyone else. And then they hold all of the power, which, is a terrifying thought. And that's just the baseline of what that coin could do. And that's not talking about USDC and USDT and things like that. Like, that's separate from that. It's if they were to do like a digital yen type of thing. But yeah, without getting into that, I just wanted to point out the Federal Reserve, and I hope you guys do some research if you want to look up more about it, and kind of see where I got my information from, or at least some of it. Some of that came from, again, G. Edward Griffin. He wrote The Creature of Jekyll Island. Some of it came from Robert Breedlove, which actually he talks about the Jekyll Island, the Creature of Jekyll Island, which actually is where, or from Jekyll Island, which is where I got kind of started on this path of learning. Um, and that's just a few. There are a couple of good documentaries that I've seen in the past that you can look up as well. And, I encourage you to look up the counter arguments and look up what's saying that, the Federal Reserve is good, because there are some that, think it's completely fine, and that their purpose is pure, and that their intentions are good, even though, it could be argued that regardless of their intention, it's what is causing that is bad. But yeah, thank you for listening, and I hope it helps encourage a new thought process. Thank you.